Hello, does anyone have a mic?
No, Mike.
It's getting worse when I play online. We'll just do that. I don't know if I hear anyone. I'm gonna reach. Hello? Oh, here we go. There we go. Yeah, I hear you.
I was being sarcastic, by the way.
I actually didn't hear you.
That's funny because I said no microphone.
Give it a minute or two, let people stream in here.
Absolutely.
Remember when we had like 800 people and Discord just stopped working?
Yes. Just broke. Like everything was frozen. All the channels because people kept typing it. Oh, so good.
It's RPC disconnected just permanently.
Yeah, it's just constantly broken. That's so funny.
I'm loving this shoutouts channel right now.
Is that like a... Oh, nice. It's like a positive channel. That's really cool. There are lots of shoutouts. Why are you laughing? What's so funny?
I don't know. I've spent I've looked at the fun channel too much. I should stop doing that.
So good. Okay, well, I think we're ready to go. Marcus, how you doing? I haven't spoken to you in a while. Heads down.
I'm good, man. I'm yeah, working on lots of stuff.
Yeah, definitely sounds like you need to sleep. Okay, make sure you do that in the next couple days.
For sure.
Welcome everybody to Office Hours. Today is February 10th. Yeah, super stoked to have you guys all here. It's been a while since we did like a really good one, so I'm stoked to be here to answer questions. I mean, there's lots coming this month and next. I don't know if you guys saw the RFC yesterday from C3. It looks phenomenal. I was reading through it. I was like, wow, this is impressive stuff. Very excited to see what those guys come up with. Yeah, and then Toucan's launching NCT today, supposedly, so we'll see when that's live. We got lots in the pipeline. Policy's been hard at work. I know people are like very concerned about metrics and the DAO and all sorts of things. And we've had a really good meeting yesterday at the policy team. We were talking about like strategies going forward. Brian had mentioned that he's gonna start doing like weekly calls twice a week to just really educate people on policy, because like one piece of the puzzle that we're always missing. So that's another piece. So I'm going to go through a lot of tangents here, so please forgive me. There was some marketing research done within the DAO from the marketing team, which was awesome, and it showed a lot of things we suspected, but now we actually have data for. Is that everybody here is new to crypto, new to DeFi, new to things in general. So market downturn, and then timing of everything that's happened, like it just led to like a perfect storm of stuff. And so what we've kind of honed in on as a solution to a lot of these is we're going to spend a lot of time educating, more so than we do now. Like we've been doing these office hours every Thursday since like we started, which is last year, which feels like an eternity ago. But we're going to continue doing them, and then each department is going to try and do like specific stuff. Policy, especially because they really want you to understand the mechanics of like what is APY, how does bonding work, you know, all this stuff. Like stuff that is very, very complicated and sophisticated from a traditional DeFi perspective, and then really just get it kind of messaged correctly in that. So that's like the one thing is we're going to focus really heavily on educating community. So we're at around 63,000 users. If you look at like just data metrics on the Dune dashboard by Kucho. And now we're looking for like the next phase. So we were talking about this within the core team just now on the core call. We've like we blew past like so if you were to treat KlimaDAO as like a startup, like we blew past the startup phase. Like we're past that. We have 63,000 users. We have consistent revenue every single day. Now the point is, okay, how do we scale up? Like how do we bring the next batch of users? How do we basically become bigger than we are today? In every sense of the word, not just in terms of asset management and pricing, but also like users, people who are involved, contributors, all that stuff. We have a wonderful contributing team of about 80 people consistently every month. We're always looking for new talent, so if you're interested, please join. Please come out and say something. If you know nothing, like there's lots of tasks for anyone. So scaling up is like the next phase of what we are, and like how do you view KlimaDAO as a system? It's many point to Olympus as like treasury as a service and like protocol owned liquidity as a service, and in many ways that's what it is. Like, but if you really want to take a step back and you look at what it is, it's a software as a service that's built around building DeFi protocol owned liquidity. So you have to evaluate it the same way, like multiples assigned on the various methods and all those things. So we're doing the same thing at KlimaDAO. We're going to be putting out a bunch of reports, like saying, okay, how do you evaluate what's working and how it is, like all those metrics, and put it down and distill it down into like the same kind of things you would see in various startups, putting out numbers on what they're doing. So it's gonna be really cool. Really excited to see what marketing comes up with. I mean, I don't have any other updates other than that. Mostly just excited to see all the launches, and then after that, like we're gonna start making decisions. Okay, we're gonna start bringing in NCTs, all this stuff from C3, like the UBO, NBO, I think they call them. Those tons will come in too, so we'll see, a whole new asset class emerge. Very excited to see what the on-chain market basically develops into in the next few months. I'll pause there. I mean, if you guys, Anisis, Chaz, Marcus, you guys got some stuff you want to chat about, I'm happy to hear.
Cool. I'll dive in on that. Just on-chain carbon market stuff real quick. What's interesting is that there's a host of new kind of usability interfaces that are launching. On one side, you have Klima Infinity, which we're super stoked about. We have some great partners lined up there. I think this is going to be just great to get basically more involvement with buying and retiring offsets on chain, being one aspect, and the other being holding Klima itself as a longer term carbon custody solution and hedging against future carbon price increases. And we are doing some interesting modeling around that, because for some large corporates that are going to have quite significant offset demand, they're going to want to see those metrics on how buying and holding Klima now over the long term, the compounding effects of the protocol and everything, is actually advantageous from a price perspective when looking to get offsets. So that's really interesting and exciting. At the same time, you have Toucan that's going to be releasing their own offset interface. I'm sure they're going to be doing some marketing themselves with different types of clients. You have, for example, C3, which is coming along, is also going to have an interface, and they're partnered with a large VCM player, which is super exciting because I'm sure they're going to be able to, basically be a liaison to some of the corporates off chain that will then want to source liquidity on chain, right? So this is all about cultivating the on-chain carbon market. And, because Klima is the base trading pair with a lot of these carbon pools that are emerging, that benefits our treasury and just benefits the protocol as a whole, right? We're the liquidity engine that's getting this all started. And now we're moving to that stage, as Archie pointed out, where it's growth, getting more users, but also, now exploring the utility of the on-chain carbon market and getting players involved. So it's all good on that front. Excited over the next 2 to 3 months as these things start to roll out. And yeah, meanwhile, we still have at the highest levels of the VCM, dialogues going on. There is a working group with ECROA, examining the digital carbon market. You have digital MRV working groups with Vera right now. And so, yeah, we're at an inflection point in the market, truly. And so it's exciting to be a part of that. Chaz, Marcus, you guys have anything before we dive into Q&A period?
Marcus, tell us about the last time you had a restful sleep.
Well, a couple days ago was pretty good. I did switch time zones earlier this week, so it definitely threw me for a loop. But the main thing that I have on my radar that I think is worth mentioning is we published a statement on the Toucan NCT launch and their mass rebalancing action that took place a couple weeks ago. Just wanted to clear the air on that and reassure the community that we believe in cooperation. Toucan is still an important partner for us, and we're going to be engaging in the governance process that they are setting up. I think their forum for that, for governing that rescue value, is supposed to go live either today or tomorrow. So we'll be putting forward a proposal on that forum to return a proportion of the rescued value back to the individuals or organizations who originally bridged those nature-based offsets. So we'll definitely we'll be posting more information about that. But otherwise, we look forward to the launch of NCT and seeing how it performs. I think the collaboration with Moss is pretty exciting. They're going to be allowing MCO2 holders to deposit MCO2 into the NCT pool or convert it in some way. The details are still being worked out, from my understanding, on that, but that'll be very cool, sort of a fusion of some of our existing partners. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any other questions people have about the Toucan partnership. I think we really want to move forward in the spirit of collaboration.
Countdown on the NCT launch, which is exciting.
Yeah, and I think the timeline for NCT bonds still kind of remains to be seen. But I think if the community is on board with our plan to reclaim some of this value, I think we can move forward with that. In the next few weeks for sure.
Cool. Well, with that, we have 206 people with us. Shall we start the Q&A period then? I see that we already have some people that'd like to get up here.
Yep, let's do it.
Okay, just invited our first person here.
Hey guys, how you doing? I guess just one question is, what type of concrete actions or roadmap do we have to, support the use case for Klima and therefore support the price action, basically, short and long term? That's my question. Thanks, guys.
I can take a stab at that. So, there's a couple of different use cases that we envision for Klima itself. The big one, the one that sort of drives this whole narrative of Klima being a carbon reserve currency, is the idea that Klima will be the core liquidity pair, right, for the on-chain market. So as we see more bridges popping up, more carbon offsets coming online, the idea is to position Klima as the core liquidity pair so that anytime you want to buy a carbon offset on chain, your trade will route through Klima and therefore drive revenue to the Klima treasury in the form of LTCs. Beyond that kind of core function as a reserve currency for the carbon markets. Klima itself can be viewed as a basket or a meta index of all the carbon offsets on chain, because our treasury that backs the Klima token is made up of all of those carbon offset assets. So exposure to Klima is something that we anticipate most legacy corporates to want at some point. That's kind of the goal of the Klima Infinity program, is to bring Klima as a carbon index asset to legacy corporates and also DeFi protocols in a way that is aligned with their corporate ESG goals, right? So the idea would be corporate buys Klima, holds it on their balance sheet, and when they want to offset, they either are selling rebases to buy offsets, or potentially selling part of their principal Klima to buy offsets at some point in the future. And because they'll be swapping, say, Klima for BCT or Klima for NCT, that trade will generate revenue again back to the treasury in the form of LP fees. There's also an opportunity for corporates to get involved with bonding, if that's something that they're interested in managing, which is again a way for anyone really, but organizations involved in the carbon markets in particular, to get exposure to the positive price action of the carbon market in general that's expected, right? We expect carbon offsets to appreciate because of increased demand and limited supply. So for a company to get exposure to that right now in the legacy world would require them having a whole team of people with carbon market expertise, engaging with brokers, right? OTC deals, that kind of thing. Whereas with Klima, it's a much simpler operation to get exposure to this new asset class of carbon offsets, basically just by buying and holding a token. Now, there is some barrier around the fact that a lot of legacy corporates are not comfortable with DeFi or with Web3 in general. They don't want to custody their own private keys. So that's really a lot of what's been going on in the background, is we're trying to work out a bunch of partnerships, both with consumers of Klima Infinity, right, users who will be buying and holding Klima or burning offsets on chain, depending on their chosen strategy, but also with custody partners and other institutions that will make it easier for those legacy players to feel comfortable operating on chain. I think I answered your question. In terms of other future revenue streams, I don't want to leak anything that's not set in stone.
Yeah, no, that was a great answer. Thank you. Appreciate it.
For sure, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a few questions that popped up in the chat. Well, I'll just go through the ones I can answer real quick, and then other people can hop in. So the KIP for NCT Klima bonds, I mean, this will have to be a foreign proposal first. We want to see basically the security of NCT first, and it's likely to be a week and a half, 2 weeks, just to make sure everything is working as planned before that proposal gets put forward. So that's that. Regarding the website launch date, things are coming together. There's some internal testing of the app and the actual website itself, just to iron out any other bugs. We basically have every contributor trying to break the website. So hopefully that launches, everything is smooth. That's coming really soon. Can't say more than that, but it's in the very final stages there. And then the Coinbase Earn update, I can't comment on that. Maybe a little Yapper will be able to jump in and talk about that. And then the status of the Genome Klima bonds. I know there's some things with Chainlink there. Is that something that you could touch on, Archimedes?
Yes. So Chainlink's ready. All the oracles are ready. The problem is they won't give KlimaDAO an oracle, which is just internally frustrating. But we ended up entering an agreement with them where we're just gonna pay them $40 a month to maintain an oracle for us. It's like a trivial sum, but they want like a zillion documents, all this crap. So the lawyer has to deal with it, and I think it's done now too. So they're just like getting those up and running. The problem or the larger problem with the GOM Klima bonds is we need a loan. We don't have enough Klima to seed it, which is not good. Um, if we're gonna run out, if we don't cards right. So we're talking to Apollo and Zeus and those guys. They might do us like an Olympus loan that we just loan the liquidity and just hold it. I just have to pick that up with them now that we have all the Chainlink stuff ready. Yeah, there's just a lot of like moving parts on other things like the launch, like Dionysus was talking about. Like, so we're trying to make sure that we have stuff in a good place before we kind of reshuffle that stuff. But I looked at the new site yesterday. Oh my god, it looks so good. I'm so excited for it. It's super crisp. I'm really big. Shout out to the entire team that worked on that design, engineering. It's phenomenal. I think it's very, very cool. Hopefully the community thinks so as well. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question. It's more like there's a good number of not issues, but like things we just have to resolve. But like we can get to the answer to that. It's pretty straightforward.
Right on. So, let's see. Oh, go ahead.
Looks like we got a couple more hands. We're just gonna invite them up.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott Tao, I think you got up here first. How you doing?
Hello?
Hey, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I think something's off with my mic. I had a question about, has there been any sort of, for lack of a better term, break-even analysis on, we're looking at needing this volume of transactions to generate this much revenue to, offset. I know we have a lot of coin-based compensation as well as any other corporate expenses that the DAO may be incurring. And especially with consideration to if we have a target runway that we'd like to support in the long term. Thanks.
Sort of DAO expenses. So we do have an eye on that. In terms of our target runway, I think 6 months to a year would be really great. That's part of the reason, honestly, that we went forward with increasing the DAO fee from 10% to 30%. So 10% was kind of a low ball number that we started with, and that ended up limiting the amount of revenue going into the DAO wallet, and therefore created this crunch around short-term funding for DAO operations. So yeah, the increase seems to have met with broad community approval, which is great. Obviously, funding the DAO is really critical. So that will alleviate some of the short-term crunch that that led to us increasing that fee. But otherwise, I think yeah, we have an eye on it. I don't think we've settled on a definitive this is our target runway, and if we go below it, we're going to start cutting costs. I think Jason and Hugh would be able to speak to that with more precision.
Okay, thank you. I guess one follow-up question would be, is any of that information on if there is a potential gap between essentially money coming in and money coming out, will that eventually be made public to the DAO, or is there any sort of visibility that we can get to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's all on the blockchain. So I can, there's a link in the official links channel here in Discord to the DAO wallet address on Zapper. And so you'd be able to track that, you know, like you can track that in real time if you wanted to. In terms of dashboards, I think it does sound like a good idea to have a public facing dashboard on DAO finances. That sounds like a great idea. I'll surface that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like Crypto Knight went away. Let's see.
We have Barrelhound up here now.
Hello, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So let me preface this by saying I'm not worried about the price action, and I've been in OMI since day one, and been at Klimates since the LBP, and still holding. And I'm just having an insane amount of respect for what you guys have done so far and everything that you're doing. As an early OMI, I also know that during the early days when one of OM had one of his brutal broad drawdowns as well. The OIP relating to locked staking surfaced, and at the time there was a lot of pushback. I was one of the big proponents of it, and I just wanted to know. I haven't been into many office hours lately. I just wanted to hear your guys' opinion on it. Let me first say that for those who don't know, locked staking doesn't necessarily imply to me that you lock your stack and don't that you can't touch it. To me, it more means that there is some sort of incentive for long-term holders, because they basically provide stability, right, and take on maybe more risk. So if you, like, for example, I think CRV or CPX have a similar mechanism where you can just, there's like a multiplier and you can unstake and stake at any point in time, but just depending on how long you've been consistently staked for, there's a little booster on top of that. So one way would be, like, let's say a slightly lower than normal APY, and that to get the massive amount of APY would be to be fully staked for the maximum amount of time, something like that. So yeah, just wanted to have your guys' opinion on it and to fully understand why it would be a bad idea. Also considering that we know now more about the protocol than we knew back then, and at the time there seemed less incentive because the APY was already insanely high, like around 50 to 100,000 when it was proposed for OM. So yeah.
Yeah, I can take a stab here. So lock staking is not necessarily a bad idea. It's more a question of how you implement it. So, you know, the simple like VE model that that's used, for instance, by CRV, where you lock for a specific period of time, and then get a multiplier on all your activities on the CRV, the Curve platform. It doesn't necessarily make that model specifically doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense for Klima, just because we aren't a DEX, right? We aren't an AMM, and so the question would be, what would the multiplier be for? And it, you know, on just the APY, what we don't want, it makes it very unpredictable. Basically, it makes the reward payouts very unpredictable, because instead of a fixed reward rate being paid out to all the staked Klima, right? And so the more people stake, the lower the APY goes. Instead, what you have is a situation where the more people lock, the higher the APY has to be. And so you'd end up having to pay out more rewards than sort of we forecast, if that makes sense. And we wouldn't be able to control how many people lock versus how many people don't with the simple VE model. So the model we've been thinking about within the policy team is a little more sophisticated. And the idea is actually based around V2 bonds. So right now we're using Olympus V1 style bonds, where all the vesting terms are 5 days, and the bonds themselves are paid out linearly and don't have staking automatically on the vested Klima. In V2, there's automatic staking of the vested Klima, as well as the ability to have different bonds for the same type of asset. Specifically, you can have bonds with different maturities, right? So the idea would be we'd have a bond that is for WS Klima, for Klima itself, basically, where the user provides Klima into the bond, and then their bond payout is also in the form of Klima, but it has a boost, right? Essentially, they get extra Klima over what they would have gotten if they had just staked. And then these like locking bonds, or whatever we would end up calling them, would have different maturities, right? So there might be like a 1 week WS Klima bond, a 1 month WS Klima bond, a 3 month WS Klima bond, and they would have a discount just like normal bonds, where the more people are trying to do that specific bond, the lower the discount goes, right? Basically, at some point, you'd actually be making less from a locked bond than you would from a normal holding and staking. And that gives us a way to control how many people or how much Klima ends up in these locked bonds, and therefore how much reward we have to pay out. So that makes a lot more, that approach makes more sense from the perspective of a rebasing protocol like Klima compared to the simple VE locking model. Does that make sense?
Not fully, but yeah, by the sounds of it, I was more, because I'm more interested in like, let's say, philosophically speaking, like what, there's a prisoner's dilemma, and wouldn't it make sense to have, apart from the auto compounding, maybe that takes care of, right, of the long-term incentive to stay staked, but you could argue that it's worth having a little bit more incentive for people that are just holding for the very long term rather than just pumping and dumping.
Yeah, totally. And I think, I guess what I was trying to get at with this explanation of the sort of it's basically a yield curve is what I was describing, right? Where you have depending on how long you're willing to stake, the market can express its preference, right? So like if everyone wants short-term bonds, right? Like they want a bond for 5 days, that tells us that people are thinking short-term. The market actors don't feel a lot of confidence in the protocol. If everyone was looking for short-term bonds, whereas if everyone's piling into the long-term bonds, it provides some information to the policy team about how the market is thinking about Klima over different time horizons. Whereas right now, all we have really is like a spot market, right? Where we have like the market price of Klima at any given time. So in terms of incentivizing long-term staking, the APY is supposed to be that incentive, right? Because the way that exponential growth operates, you really see most of the payout at the end, right? There's this famous example, right, of how long does it take for a lake that's half covered in algae growing exponentially to be fully covered in algae, and the answer is 1 day, because by the time it's covered half the lake, if it's growing exponentially, it's doubling every day. Right, so it's very counterintuitive for humans to make sense of that. Most of the staking rewards come at the end of staking. Even though the APY started out high, what we're effectively doing when we go from 50,000 to 10,000 to 5,000 or however we reduce the APY over time, we're basically extending that time horizon out, so that you have to stay staked for longer to realize the full return that you were expecting when we initially launched. So I guess that's why it's hard. It's like, staking rewards are the long-term incentive, but because humans don't think very well in terms of exponential growth, it's hard to see that is a long-term incentive. It seems like a short-term incentive because it goes from 80K for the first 4 weeks or whatever, and then declines rapidly. Really, the rewards do come the longer you hold, proportionally, because of auto compounding. So I hear you. I think there's a desire to reward long-term stakers in a way that goes beyond just the APY for staking, and I think one thing I know we're talking about internally and trying to figure out how to do is to have some kind of POAP or other low-cost NFT that can be distributed to stakers who have staked for since launch, or who have staked for longer than, say, a certain number of months. But I realize that's not a monetary incentive necessarily. I think we should continue this discussion in policy chat unless anyone else has more to add.
I got a couple things to add. So if you read between the lines on the C3 proposal that came in yesterday, they talk about the ability to use Klima as collateral for locked staking, which it's not ready yet, obviously, because it's not launched. But if there's a gauge that comes up, because basically, like, it seems like their model is going to be something similar to that, from all the documentation I've seen from those guys. It's basically this long-term and staking incentive will be there, so it'll be baked into their proposal and like their decentralized permissionless piece, right? So there will be like external demand for Klima outside of the ecosystem based on that alone. So there's a lot of like interesting, cool DeFi pieces that were being repurposed for refi, and that's one of them, right? So once we get there, we get closer to that, we can start seeing like what is that going to be looking like, and what are we going to see?
All right, that sounds great. I haven't heard of C3, so if you could link something in the chat, I would love to read up on that. And as to your answer, Marcus Aurelius, yeah, that's exactly why I was asking. I mean, mathematically, it makes sense to me that there is long-term incentive, right, because of auto compounding. But I've been hanging out maybe too much in the trading chat lately, and it just seems that the general sentiment is that people don't see the long-term incentive, right? And it's exactly the thing you pinpoint as well. So I figured lock staking is something it's like a layer on top that does provide that a little bit more tangible incentive and a little bit easier to grasp. And for that reason could be valuable. But yeah, I absolutely understand all the difficulties and yeah, that it will be hard to gauge inflows and outflows and all that. So thanks everything for thanks for your replies.
Absolutely, thank you. I think just to summarize, like, we do think lock staking is a good idea. The question is, how do you implement it, right, in a way that makes sense for the protocol? Thank you for that question. Howdy, Nate.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I am really excited for Klima Infinity here, either next week or maybe the week after. There's been one thing that's kind of been on my mind, though. I don't think, and I could have totally missed it, I don't think there's been any official write-up on like how the tokenomics would work. And so I maybe just wanted to ask here. I wonder if maybe Archie would be the right person to ask, but like this may be a brief overview of the specifics on like actual tokens on chain moving, things like that. So would it be a situation where, okay, I want to offset my footprint, and then it is the risk-free value that is the amount of tons that I get to offset? Would there be future rebases and it's just the fact that my token is taken out of circulation and frozen, or do you not get any future rebases at all after you use Klima to offset? Can you only use Klima to offset, or would it be open to, like, I can bring BCT and still use the Klima Infinity to offset and just things like that. So I was just wondering, like, how do the tokenomics work?
Okay, I can jump in on this piece. So of course, we're going to have user guides that really explain this and sort of delineate the different products within Klima Infinity. One key distinction, though, of course, is when you're talking about an offset itself, in the legacy market, this is called retirement, where essentially you're permanently taking that asset out of circulation, right? No one else then can claim that environmental impact. And so it's similar to how things would work on chain, right? So essentially you would want these offsets to be burned and permanently taken out of circulation. So part of Klima Infinity will have a dashboard or an interface where people can do exactly that. They can choose the different on-chain assets that they'd actually like to permanently burn, and then we can allow that to happen. But the interesting piece is that then, as part of your overall like longer term climate impact, you can also choose to stake Klima, and this can be seen as a price hedge in some ways against the future price increases of offsets. And so you're locking this carbon away. It's not necessarily burning the tokens within, but you're pulling that Klima out of circulation, you're locking it, and then through the compounding effects of the protocol, you're therefore increasing your positive climate impact over time, right? And so a lot of the partners that we have in right now, they're actually choosing to be climate positive in the sense that they've calculated their emissions, and we have a number of different partners to help with that, which is really great. But so they're calculating their emissions, they're choosing to actually offset by burning tokens, either equal to that, and then they're additionally choosing to stake Klima, right, to achieve that longer term impact. And then they can revisit things, whether it's on a monthly basis or a yearly basis. They can choose to then stake additional Klima or to offset additional assets on chain.
So maybe I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. So it would be a situation where Klima itself, that token, is then used and retired, or is it more of a situation where you can stake Klima and then trade it for BTC, swap it for BTC at a future date? Just trying to like think like how are things actually on chain moving around? Sorry if there's confusion.
No, all good. So for the retirement piece, you would simply just be market buying and burning BCT, MCO2, etc. Or whatever the tokenized carbon asset is in the future. For the staking Klima piece, you're simply getting Klima. Now you may do that through bonding. So you could choose to let's say your carbon footprint is 2,000 tons. You could choose to immediately buy those 2,000 tons. 1,000 of them you could burn and retire immediately, and that will show in the client's dashboard. And then the other 1,000 could be bonded then to have Klima, and then that Klima is just staked, right? And then that's the compounding climate positive impact over time by locking that carbon away essentially. Right. There's options as well then where you could choose to take, let's say, 50% of your rebases and then automatically buy and retire offsets with that as well. Right. So this will drastically increase some of the on-chain activity, between Klima and other tokenized carbon pairs, and obviously work to reduce supply of some of these carbon assets which are already on chain.
And then would that, if you're automatically retiring, like swapping and retiring a certain portion of rebases, would that be pushed through an AMM, or would it just kind of be internally moving around within the treasury, and that would not affect price for either or what have you?
You would be through the AMMs.
Awesome. I think I understand it enough to the point until more gets written up, and that was awesome. Hey, thanks, guys.
Cheers. And we'll have like more visual kind of insight and graphs and such like that to kind of make it easier. There's definitely a few moving pieces in the background, but it's a really exciting product. It's something that currently doesn't exist in the sustainability space, so we're super stoked to launch that.
Hi, Jess Allen. Welcome. I don't think we can hear you. Jess, maybe you can try dropping and rejoining, and we'll get you back up here. That's all the hands we have raised. If anybody else has a question, please feel free to raise your hand or post in the text chat.
Ooh, that's a good question. Any information on building a carbon credit-based stablecoin? Yes.
Care to share it?
That is the information. Yes. No. I was told not to leak any more alpha. I got in trouble today, so.
Recent development, apparently NCT just went live.
Yep, we're watching it. Looks like it's gonna launch at a price of $10, I think.
Cool. Zio, you want to go ahead?
Hi, how are you guys? Can you hear me?
Good, yes, we can hear you. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. I just wanted to also add on that we should incentivize long-term holding, but that was covered a little bit earlier. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that works hard and keeps pushing for Klima. We're all on a big team, so thank you guys. That's about it.
Thanks for the positive vibes, man.
Awesome.
Cheers.
See you guys. Cheers.
Thanks,
Oh,
man.
go Rams. Go Rams this weekend. Let's go.
Hey, Jess, how you doing? We can hear you now.
You sure you can hear me?
Yep, I can anyway.
Oh, awesome. All right. So, thank you guys so much for all that you're doing. I have a curiosity, and it might be a total noob question. At the beginning of the call, someone was talking about integrating with Chainlink and the fact that new Klima would need to be purchased and new like funding, and the founders would have to get involved in that. And I was just super curious, like, what is exactly like when there's not enough Klima and someone needs to buy more, and where do the coins come from? And like, I'm just kind of curious, maybe the tokenomics of that transaction and logic there.
Oh, okay. This is really simple. So, Chainlink wants us to pay $40 a month subscription to maintain a node, and the core team's just gonna pay it out of their pockets. So we don't even have to bother because it's like $40, right? So it's $480 a year. It's not a big deal. We can do it. So there's no like weird. The tokenomics would remain the same.
Okay. Did I misunderstand when I thought there was needing to be some infusion of Klima tokens and there quote unquote was lying around? Or I guess my phone's been cutting in and out, so I could have only heard.
Oh, you're talking. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're talking about the Geom piece, right? So like the Geom bond, someone asked the question, why are Geom bonds not up? And it's because it relies on a Chainlink oracle. So the Chainlink oracle, basically what it provides is it provides a way to track two things. A, the Geom price on the main chain, which is Ethereum, and B, the index of Geom, or Ohm in general on the main chain. So you need those two oracles. Klima subsequently needs the same. We need a price oracle, which we can pull from the contract, so you don't actually really need a price oracle. But what you do need is an index oracle. You need a way to actually pull the index reliably on a different pair. So anyway, those two things rely on Chainlink, but Chainlink's not privy to the actual problem at hand, which is probably where you're a little confused. Is the KIP4, when we posted this, required $5 million in liquidity from Klima, which we do not have. With the price action the way it is, and simply the fact that we've been only taking a 10% fee as opposed to 100 like Ohm does, we took a much more conservative approach with our treasury, and as a result, like we just simply don't have the funds to seed that liquidity as promised. So we're basically looking to get a loan on that liquidity from Olympus. And that transaction will basically be like Ohm giving us the liquidity, and then we kind of like do a deal based on that. But it's, yeah, we have to figure out the details of it. And if it requires a vote like of some sort, then we'll put it up again.
Yeah,
thanks for the clarity.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question.
Does that make sense?
to be honest, but it's like it kind of, I mean, so what I hear you saying is some essentially there's a liquidity pool in Klima that needs funding, and because of price action, meaning there aren't enough buyers, that we have to go somewhere else to.
I think just cut out, or at least I lost her audio.
Same.
Yeah, I did too.
But I think so I think there's a couple different scenarios that could play out, right? So as I was saying earlier in response to a different question, one step we've already taken to bring more revenue into the DAO is this increase in fee from 10% to 30%, which will just sort of over time drive more Klima into the DAO wallet for operations like this. But I think Archie's point about the Geom Klima bonds is more of a short-term issue, and that's why a loan from Olympus makes a lot of sense, because short-term they have more capital than we have in our DAO wallet right now, but long-term, we're not going anywhere, and so that loan, I think Olympus hopefully will feel safe that Klima itself is a strong project and we're not going anywhere, and so that loan will be in safe hands in the form of liquidity within the Klima treasury. In the event that the DAO wallet did run critically low on funds, there are a couple of ways that that the DAO could be resuscitated, essentially, or have a new infusion of Klima brought in. There is a community allocation of P Klima, which is the way I think of it is like a strategic reserve for the DAO. So what that would require to mint Klima from that P Klima is some entity would need to source offsets like BCT or NCT in order to provide the backing for the newly minted Klima created from that P Klima. But that could be done, in a relatively cost-effective way, basically by bringing, by buying BCT and bringing that, or bridging tons on chain from the legacy world. I don't know exactly who would carry out that operation. I'm guessing that in that dire scenario where the DAO is running low on Klima, we wouldn't don't have enough Klima to pay contributors or engage in the DAO activities that we want. That P Klima community allocation could be tapped as a strategic reserve to reinvigorate the DAO. Let's see.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you. So this is somewhat tangential to the bonding question asked earlier, but my question stems around first and foremost my lack of understanding of how this model, the rebasing model, plays out long term. But my current understanding of it is that as we bond, whatever assets with Klima, then Klima becomes stable, and then we pay out at whatever APY. I think it's like 7,000 right now. You are just creating a significantly dilutive effect. And I know that the idea is to reduce that APY over time. But I'm curious if you could elaborate a little bit more around when that transition happens from being a dilutive release or emission of Klima to one that actually resonates with like real value. Because my thought process is that those emissions are dilutive up until the point where the protocol revenue and increase in treasury outstrips the emissions of Klima. But I'm not sure if I'm thinking about that correctly, or if that made any sense. But would love to get your thoughts.
Sorry, I caught the last piece on the APY reduction. Do you want to specify that again? And then I'll see if I can just answer this.
Yeah, so just generally when thinking about the OHM model of rebasing tokens, at its core, it's a dilutive model over time, right? Like it's necessary for our mechanism for acquiring climate-based assets or offsets, but simultaneously, like I'm staking a, 1 Klima, 10 Klima, and I'm getting a certain APY on that. The value of that APY in both the short and the long term isn't actually going to result in profitability, right? Because we're just increasing the supply. So what I'm wondering is, at what point does that supply increase, or does that emission of Klima to stakers transition from being simply dilutive to actually being a net value gain to the stakers? And my understanding is that is when protocol revenues outstrip that emission, but I'm wondering what the thought process is there from the team about when that might happen, or even my understanding here is correct.
Sure. Yeah, so there's been APY changes based on kind of changes in the market that we've done before, but we did have this overall timeline showing you the different phases of APY reduction and what that kind of corresponds to with the protocol. You're correct that yes, when there's sufficient activity on chain of the carbon market and Klima is the trading pair, after we've incentivized deeper liquidity, and you have different actors in the space that are actually buying and selling carbon credits, retiring them, etc., that then there's more revenues that are brought into the protocol. And yes, at a certain point, that then outstrips that's actually bringing things in. But it's really important in the beginning, because you're going through this carbon-backed currency, that we actually are increasing supply at quite a large rate, and then rapidly bringing in assets to the treasury. So it's that bootstrapping phase, and we're moving beyond that now to a certain extent, where we're getting closer to that maturation phase. We've lowered the APY, but in terms of overall modeling, I think that's the type of question when I think next week there's actually going to be 2 policy talks where we dive a bit deeper into those different mechanisms, regarding protocol revenue, what bonds are actually bringing in, etc. And that's something that they may release more information on, let's say like an updated time schedule for those different actions.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Cheers. I don't see any other requests. We're coming up on the hour here, so I think it's good from my side. Chaz, Marcus, Archie, shall we call it?
I'm
Yep,
also
sounds good.
Anything left to add, Archie?
No, that's good. I mean, this has been a great session. Thank you all for coming. I'm super excited about the next steps. It's been a long road. It's always so humbling to look at the clock and be like, it's only been so many months. Next week we turn October. November, December, January. 4 months. Next week on the 8th. So, you know, we got time.
Are you certain we
But,
aren't on the
yeah.
planet from Interstellar?
Yeah, I'm certain as well. One week here is 85 years. No, I'm super stoked. So, but yeah, I'm excited. Things are great. Let's keep it going. And you know, we're gonna keep building. We're here for a long time, and we're gonna stay that way.
Oh, and if anybody's going to eat Denver, reach out to me because I'm going. I'm gonna be pitching Klima to a ton of people.
That's sick. Yeah, the famous Chaz in person.
Well,
All right, guys.
see you guys.
I'm gonna exit. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.
Cheers.